Hey, do you want me to go back to do you want me to go back to the call to order?
That'd be best. Yep.
Okay. I'm calling the CAB meeting of April 11th to order. Per the governor's extended proclamation 2028, and in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Jefferson County PUD is no longer providing an in-person room for meetings of the BOC and the CAB. All meetings will be held remotely via Zoom until otherwise informed by the governor. Participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute, and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. And the first order after the call to order is an introduction of a new CAB member. Bruce Alexander is from District 3, and he was at our last meeting, and I neglected to introduce you to him then. I apologize for that. And he's attended some Board of Commissioner meetings already and has been active in a couple of subcommittees. So Bruce, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm calling in, so can you hear me right now, Jessica?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, good. My name is Bruce Alexander. I live in Brennan with my wife, and I am retired from, I've had several businesses in the past. Most of them are finance related. I've got a good business background, and I'm just wanted to get involved in the community, and this was when I noticed the opportunity was there, I stepped up, and I've enjoyed working with the rest of you, and look forward to doing some good things for Jefferson County. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Next on, and we're happy to have Bruce on board. Like I said, I'm on a couple of committees with him, and he's very participatory. Next on up here is to approve the agenda.
Jessica?
Yes?
Tammy? Did you
I
need
should do
to,
it. Yeah.
Did you need to get a quorum established?
Yes, ma'am, I do. And I need to do some introductions here too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to just go ahead and call off the names of the participants I see here, since there are so many of us. It's kind of difficult otherwise. I see Dan Taylor, Rick Johnson, Rod Rodwin, Tom Engel, Craig Durgan, and myself. Kellen Lynch is in Europe and was hoping to maybe be able to come in at the meeting, but I don't see him there at this time. And Seb is extremely busy with his business and said that he would try to attend the meeting, but he may not be here for the entire meeting. So with the 7 of us, that does establish a quorum. And as far as other introductions go from staff, we have General Manager Kevin Street, Will O'Donnell. We also have Cammie Brown taking our minutes. We have Don McDaniel, who is a CAB resource guy and BOC consultant. And our commissioner that we have with us today is Commissioner Kenneth Collins. Thank you for joining us today. So now moving on. If everyone's had an opportunity to review the agenda, I would like to know if there are any changes or additions that you would like to make. Craig? You're muted.
Yeah, I had previously sent an email to have an agenda item specifically about the formal adoption process of forming subcommittees, and that was not included.
Okay, what I was anticipating doing is when we do our subcommittee reports, if you'll see that CAB business item 8.1. It says subcommittee reports and process discussion.
Well, I asked for a specific agenda item so that it would be separate from subcommittee reports.
Okay, I don't really understand because it's subcommittee reports and process discussion. Do you want, so what you're saying is you want a separate item, I don't know, maybe move item 8.2 to make it 8.3 and 8.3 to make it 8.4 and do an 8.2 to be specifically process discussion?
I think before we get into any subcommittees, that we should discuss the proper formation of new subcommittees.
Well, let's do this.
The last meeting, we specifically went through a voting process to eliminate subcommittees. But we never went through the vote process to create new subcommittees. So I think we should have a discussion on that topic, and we should come up with a policy on the formation of new subcommittees.
We do have policies in place already. If you would look at the operation guidelines, there are policies in place, and I will go ahead and
I
cover some of
read
that later.
those. I read those, and they do not cover the formation of new subcommittees, in my opinion. So I asked for an agenda item to discuss the proper formation of subcommittees and how that would be done for the CAB.
Okay, well, what we will do is 8.1 subcommittee reports, 8.2 process discussion. I want to hear the reports first. And 8.3 will be communications with staff, and that will also be communications in general. And 8.4 will be CAB email. Are there any other changes or additions to the agenda? Hang on a second, I have to get to a different screen so I can see raised hands. I don't see any other raised hands there. So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Who was that who spoke?
Dan.
Okay, Dan Taylor moves the agenda to be approved as amended. Do I have a second on that?
Sure.
And who is speaking?
Rick.
Rick, thanks. Rick Johnson seconded. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please say aye.
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 Okay. Hi, Seb.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, thank you for your time.
I just saved somebody from an amputation.
Oh my gosh,
My goal,
a noble one.
or permanent disfigurement, one or the other.
Okay, so we have an agenda approved. Now we come to the moment of public comment. And this comment period of up to 15 minutes is for any items not on the agenda. During the meeting, the chair may also permit public comments on other discussion items. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment? And I'm not seeing anyone here from the public, so I would surmise that no, we do not. So we'll move on to the minutes. And has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from that would have been March 14th meeting?
Jessica, there were no minutes included in this packet.
I thought they were in the body of the, of it.
No,
Huh.
I did not receive any to add into it for this month, so.
Oh, okay, okay, well, I apologize. I had seen the minutes, but I forgot that they had not been submitted for this particular meeting. So with that, we will likely have the minutes for the March 14 meeting at our next meeting in May. So BOC update, Commissioner Collins, you're up.
Good afternoon. So a lot of the attention of the Board of Commissioners has been on broadband. As I'm sure you're all aware, Jefferson PUD will have about $24 million of grants to work with, some of which will require a layout from the PUD in advance of our being reimbursed by the government, which creates a little bit of a financial crunch for us, but one I think that we can live with. And we had good news, I guess it was about a week ago, when we learned that FEMA had approved a declaration of emergency for us, and we'll be getting some reimbursement. Otherwise, all three commissioners are planning on attending the Washington PUD Association conference Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. And this will actually be the first conference that I've attended in person in 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see how many people attend in person and how many attend virtually. And it'll be my last meeting as president of the PUD Association. And I will be literally passing a baton that I haven't held in my hand. There's a part of the ritual is to pass a mallet, which signifies that you're the board chair. And I never got the mallet initially. So I'll have it in my hand only to give it away, but life is like that. I don't have a lot more to report about board activities, and I'll leave it go with that. I'm happy to take any questions that any of you might have. Or not.
Well, I'm not seeing any hands, Commissioner, so I guess that's a pretty comprehensive report for us then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kevin, it looks like you're up.
Okay, I'm going to give you a couple updates. Ken can update you on broadband, so I'm going to update you on the electric and water, kind of what the crews are doing and what's going on. So on the electric side, our crews are doing a lot of pole change outs. We have spent the last month doing some testing, and the crews are now following through with changing out poles and doing quite a bit of work that in the long run will reduce outages and make us a lot more reliable. And really, since I've been here, this is the first time the crews have really sat down and concentrated on pole changeouts. It's been a pole here, a pole there, but not a concentrated effort like we're trying to do right now. We seem to have got past the outage season. We have a little time right now because construction hasn't hit us like we thought it would. There are some people talking about some bigger subdivisions, but the kind of our bread and butter, the simple service to a new house or a couple houses, has not increased to date. Not saying when the weather gets a little bit nicer, it won't increase. I do or visited with the both the city and the county, and they're saying their permitting process is way up compared to what it was a year or so ago, but it hasn't come over to us yet. Maybe it will, we're not real sure. So primarily that's what the line crews are doing. The water department's biggest project right now is the Quilcene water tank. They've had a couple visits on site with contractors for the bid of the project. It's $2.5 million project where we're taking the old tank, which is seismically inadequate and has to be replaced with a new tank. And it'll be a win for the community in Quilcene with some booster pumps. The fire flow will increase dramatically, which is always a good thing for communities. And part of the water tank development is the new booster pumps to help push water throughout the community there. Another thing that's starting to take a little bit of Sam and Will's time is we're trying to find funding for water projects. In the water division, the projects are very, very expensive, $2.5 million for a water tank. And there's so few customers that without some kind of assistance or very low interest loans, we could not continue to do the repairs and the maintenance that's needed on the water side. And I think one of the sad truths that is going on right now is there are billions for broadband, and there's not so much money for water. It's with a lot of things, you know, it's one or the other. And right now, fiber is getting the bulk of the grant opportunities and water is not. And what is available, grants and low interest loans, are very, very competitive and require a lot of work from, like I say, Will and Samantha. So that's what's going on the water side and the electrical side. I'll gladly answer any questions. Tom, I think you were first.
I just wanted to know what the status of the meter replacement program is.
So the meter replacement program is really at its infancy. We have issued a contract. We actually installed the gateway at 191 Otto Street last week. We will start putting in just 2 or 3 meters in selected areas to test how the communication is going to work, and then also to make sure that the reads and all the information go all the way back to NISC and from NISC back to the meter. So we have started the process, but I'm saying we're still in the development phase and probably won't be doing bulk meter change outs till later this fall.
But you do have a vendor and that's been established?
Yes, the vendor is Vision Metering out of Carolinas, and they will produce the meters for us and help us with the programming and the interface between their meters and our software products.
Thank you.
Seb, I think you were next.
Kevin, thank you. A follow-up from Tom. It's interesting to hear that Vision, you're starting to get started with. Do you actually have some Vision meters in hand?
We don't. We get our first 8 meters next week.
Oh, fun. Are you gonna have a ribbon cutting ceremony or something?
It'll probably be much lower key than that.
Oh, okay. Are they fiber ready?
Today they are not fiber ready. We do see the fiber meter, which at this time would be a collar, would be something that is very desirable in remote areas. Some development still has to be ready for the fiber meter to take a direct plug. Not sure if that's going to happen anytime soon, but the collars are available.
I know that some of the so-called the AWACS systems, or is that something else? That's early warning. There's some of the systems, some of the meters allow for many different ways of collecting information, not just RF. Also, I wanted to know, you talked briefly about the workload right now and the fact the crew is able to start doing some regular pole replacement, which is terrific because yeah, you're on your back foot all the time with old poles. Is our crew doing that, or is the Palouse crew doing that? Or have they
right
kind of
now,
picked it up?
right now, primarily our crew is doing the pole change out. I'm not going to say full time because they do work in a customer project throughout the week, but yeah, our crew's doing it full time. And the Palouse crew is doing some, but it's primarily a project we've assigned to our crews.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Palouse, I mean, we know that the ratepayer owners are taking quite a hit at the cost of that crew. Has there been any discussion with the board about asking for a revision of the contract that was let so that we can maybe save a little money on that and get somebody else here instead? I think that'd be something to look at, but that's policy that the commissioners would handle. I'm just not comfortable with spending a lot of money on an outfit from so far away unless it was a competitively bid process where we get to review how much we're paying and what we're getting for that money.
We have not viewed this or reviewed this with the commissioners. We will review it with them at a coming date. But as you know, Titan is a further away company because it's a Canadian-owned company. So Palouse is at least a Washington State company.
Yeah, but when you're paying for per diems and travel time and all of that, the closer they are, the less money we're going to spend. I think if you gauge the prices as we have of the two different companies, we paid far less for Titan. That's why I'm asking. It's like,
oh, we pay less for Titan, but the per diem rates and that kind of stuff where Titan wasn't on site getting paid and Palouse is. So hard to draw comparisons, but I hear you.
Yeah, all right. Because we are trying to watchdog the expense because a lot of us don't make that much money. Anyway, thank you for being aware of it and taking my concerns into account. Thank you.
Craig, I think you're next.
Yeah, a while back, you had kind of raised an alarm about transformers. Is that still a big issue?
It is still a big issue. We have procured some transformers. We feel extremely fortunate, but I believe it will be an ongoing issue for the next 2 years. So we are concerned. We've picked up more than we thought we would, and the commission has approved some policies with idle services and a couple subdivisions. We've told the developers we would not install all of the transformers at this time, that we would only install transformers that are going to be used to build homes in the next little while. So with that, we think we're going to be okay, Craig, but we're watching it real close.
Okay, thank you. And it's sort of along the same lines in a way, is, reliability of power. And so I know you're running the line across, a new line, I guess, buried from the Chimicum substation, and it's going to tie over to Oak Bay Road, which then feeds down where I live. I just wonder what the timeline is for that.
That's a multi-year project. We just barely received the last of the easements to get underneath Chimicum Creek on the substation side. We hope to meet with the Corps of Engineers in the county within the next 2 months to start that permitting process. So it's a needed intertie. What it allows us to do is split out Indian Island and Marrowstone on its own circuit, Port Ludlow on a separate circuit. And eventually we would like to be able to even split it further to Indian Island and Marrowstone on separate circuits. So that's the long-term goal. Will was notified that the Navy's coming back and wants us to submit for the grant again for the substation upgrade, which puts another secondary transformer there in Chimicum substation, and we'll be working on that paperwork also. So it's a large project.
So this will be all underground up Chimicum Road, is that correct? Which side?
It's not along the road. It actually goes along Shoals Pit. And then I can't remember the name of the road where it turns off of Shoals Pit and goes towards Oak Bay, but it's an existing county easement.
I'd just like to make a comment. With the nature of these questions, they go far too much into detail. This doesn't concern the CAB to the extent that it's currently being. And I suggest that Craig maybe contact Kevin offline.
Well, I kind of disagree with your allusion there, and I'm not asking anything controversial. I mean, we have a subcommittee that was formed last meeting along the lines of asking these questions. So I don't see any reason why I can't find out about this. So I just think it's pretty inappropriate that you jumped in like that, to tell you the truth, Tom. So thank you for your answers, Kevin.
Dan.
Yeah, pole replacement. I'm guessing, because I don't think any of them except the ones that come to my house have been replaced in my lifetime, that these are probably going to be replaced. We probably would need a little notification to keep the crew safe. My dog's not exactly friendly, and neither is Kelsey's, and her house is between here and there, so might be a good idea.
I will forewarn them about you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you. And is it Doug on the phone?
That's Bruce on the phone.
Or Bruce, excuse me. Sorry about that, Bruce.
That's okay. So at the last CAB meeting, we were talking about the final business plan for the broadband. Have you made any progress on that?
Yes. Actually, Will and I were on a meeting earlier today with Doug Dawson. There's a handful of questions left. Doug was hoping to get some preliminary stuff to Will by the end of the week. Our goal is one of the first meetings in May to present to the board. So it is moving along. And there's just so much going on. It has taken us longer to get it finished, but the numbers are based on actual grant numbers and very good information. So we're looking forward to presenting it to the board.
I guess it's kind of a follow-up question, Kevin, but is are the pro forma numbers or the financial numbers in there based on current assumptions, or are the numbers a couple of years old?
Everything is current up to even numbers that were talked about today. And so it will be based on all current and relevant information that we have today.
Okay, thank you. So we should be able to look at that online sometime in the beginning of May?
Usually how we do it is the board will get it in a meeting, and then right after that board meeting, it'll be made available to the public via the website.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, last meeting, there was some comments about incentivizing new hires at the PUD. What are your vacancies currently, and are there incentive levels or signing bonuses?
So on the line crew, we would like to hire 2 new linemen and 1 pre-apprentice. The board has approved non-representative signing bonus, moving bonuses, and some odds and ends. They're a negotiated item with the IBW, so we will negotiate that. We're not expecting any, more of a formality. We're going to say, okay, this is what we're going to offer, and basically get a confirmation back. We did talk to the union about this last week. We hope to, via some emails, get some confirmation and move forward with the incentives on the union side. So we, for a signing bonus, it's up to 8,000. Moving bonus, it's up to 8,000 for moving expenses. That's the 2 biggies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce, is your hand still up intentionally, or have you just not taken it down?
I have not taken it down, but I will do that now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, as far as I can see, I think you got the lion's share of the questions, and I'm not seeing any more hands. Will, are you seeing anything?
All clear.
Okay, with that, we will move on to cab business. And the first item on the cab business are subcommittee reports. And we'll start with broadband. And I don't know who is giving the broadband.
That's me.
Okay, Rod.
I'm the spokesman. Bruce and Craig and I have talked and have a lot of questions about where broadband is. It was interesting hearing Kevin's report here just a couple of minutes ago, things we had not heard. I've gone through the documents on the PUD site, and it's not easy to bring everything together so that you're up to date and understand where everything is. So we don't have a report as such. What we have is a list of questions that we would like to submit to the PUD for discussion then at the next meeting.
Good.
Seeing a thumbs up there. Okay, the next one is climate change, and that will be Tom Engel.
Yeah, thanks. Well, Jessica and Bruce and I met and talked about possible topics. And I guess just as an intro to this discussion, it seemed to me that what we talked about last time was kind of that we would view these subcommittees in quotes as temporary. And basically, we're going to try to present a description of what might happen if these subcommittees were formed. And on that basis, to ask the group to actually okay them. Is that correct, Jessica?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So in terms of the climate change committee, that we kind of agreed on 3 kind of major thrusts that we thought that would be useful. One of them concerns electric vehicle adoption. The state of Washington, the legislature adopted a resolution. It's not binding yet, but it essentially called for gasoline-powered vehicle sales in Washington to stop by 2030. That's only 8 years in advance, and the issue is how to deal with replace the road tax that is currently based on gasoline sales. So the point is basically that in a relatively short amount of time, there's going to be a dramatic shift to electric vehicles. And you're probably aware that General Motors has said that after 2035, they will not produce light-duty gasoline-powered vehicles anymore. There will always be trucks, et cetera, for conditions that are not easily handled by battery-driven vehicles. So one of the crucial things that has to do with electric vehicle adoption is the ability of charging stations. And we would like to look into this for Jefferson County. There are US Department of Energy sites that will give you an idea of how many level 1, level 2, and level 3 chargers are needed in a community. I'll remind you, level 1 is 110 volts, level 2 is 240 volts, and level 3 is DC fast charging at 480 volts. And the suggestion is that for a adoption on the order of 2,000 electric vehicles, which is far less than the number of vehicles, I think, which is now about 15,000 registered in Jefferson County, we'd need more than 100 level 2 chargers, public access level 2 chargers, primarily in shopping areas and in places of work. And so we'd like to so how can one raise the capital for this? Well, if this many electric vehicles are dispersed, it will result in additional revenue to the PUD of on the order of $500,000 a year. And so, I mean, one option that we would like to pursue is there a way that the PUD could essentially finance the installation of these level 2 chargers with a payback period then between 3 and 4 years through the increased revenues. So that's the one topic we looked at. Another topic is that there's a lot of issues about getting public awareness on climate change related areas. The local newspapers don't cover anything like this. And the PUD monthly newsletter is a way to reach 19,000 residents or households in Jefferson County. And we would like to suggest that a certain amount of each of these newsletters be reserved for climate change related issues, like that explain, for instance, how why owning and operating electric vehicles is cheaper than you think. Edmunds.com says the cheapest vehicle to buy new and use for 5 years in the United States is the Nissan Leaf, because the operating costs are so low that the higher purchase cost is offset. Also to kind of make more noise about heat pumps and other revenues, other venues like that. And the third issue, I'm losing my memory here. Okay, any help from either Bruce or Jessica on this?
Yeah, Tom, I believe the third issue we were talking about was related again to electric vehicles with respect to as vehicles are being replaced in the fleet.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Jessica. That was correct. And basically, we all we can say on that is that we would just like the PUD to be aware that wherever possible, if replacing a vehicle, to use an electric vehicle. This is not work for the subcommittee in the sense that I'm sure that the PUD is aware of this, and there aren't a lot of specialized vehicles that then you could buy battery operated, but whatever in the way of replacement can be done with a battery operated vehicle, we would urge the PUD to take that on. And that's the nature of my report. You're muted, Jessica.
My lips are moving, but no sound is coming out, huh? Thanks a lot for that, Tom. Does anyone have any questions for Tom? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the,
I have my hand up.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it, Craig.
Yeah, so that was quite a lot that you rolled out there, especially about going from the state having a non-binding, basically resolution of electric vehicles to automatically thinking that it's going to be mandatory. So I'm just a little concerned here that we're getting ahead of the game. And, you know, electric vehicles are on the road. I see them, and I'm sure there'll be more of them, but I'm not sure that we need to rush into this so quickly. Thank you.
Okay, with that, did you have any response, Tom, or are we good to go on?
No response.
Thank you. The next subcommittee report is from the distributive generation. And I don't know who's giving that one.
Yeah, I'll give that report. Tom and I spoke a little bit, and we didn't have a real good framework to go on. As far as distributed generation, of course, it means small generation scattered here and there. Currently, most of the distributed generation in the county, to my knowledge, is small solar projects on individual homes. We talked a little bit about the potential for pump storage. The only small generation project I'm aware of, Kevin could correct me if not, is that there's a little hydro plant down in West Uncas, or at least there used to be. Is it still in operation? Yes and no, yeah.
Not
I don't,
sure.
okay. Yeah, I don't know if that's a future, but pump storage would marry nicely with the PUD's water side if there were a vision there, but that's just all potential at this point. To my way of thinking, a logical first step would be to marry small solar projects to charging stations, which would be there seem to be a lot of how shall I say, grants or incentives out there for such things. So that may be an area we want to keep an eye on and explore some more.
Okay, it looks like Dan has his hand raised.
Well, I thought I could offer a little clarity to the Uncas power generation. That's my plan. And so it's been it's an old plant. It came online in '77 and has worn itself out effectively twice and needs considerable upgrade to do much, which is on my list of things to do in my retirement years, but hasn't reached the priority level yet.
Okay, thank you.
Jessica, you're muted.
There we go. I said I'm not seeing any more hands there, so thank you for that report, Rick. And this takes us to the Energy Efficiency Subcommittee. And who is the spokesperson for that?
Rod is the spokesperson for that.
Rod is or Tom is?
Rod is.
Rod is. Oh, I see. Rod didn't know that. Tom and I have had a couple of discussions about energy efficiency and some of the looked at what some of the other PUDs are doing in the area, and it looks to me like Jefferson County PUD is doing more than most. There are a couple that do more, but I have another document that I don't have up right this minute. The Clallam County PUD does quite a lot, but Jefferson County PUD there's quite a lot on there. So I'm not sure. We haven't had an opportunity to look beyond the list and see what other items we might suggest that we would have to save for the next meeting.
So would you see that as that it sounds like what you're saying is that while we're doing a good job, there are other things that we could be exploring to recommend?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I think so, yes.
That sounds good.
We basically need a little time to do a little bit more research.
Okay. I'm up next with the Governance Committee. And basically, my understanding of when the committees first form is that what you want to do is you need to propose what your goals are, define your scope of work and the process. And we kind of had a serial meeting, which you're allowed to do with subcommittees because you aren't, you don't establish a quorum. And Seb and Bruce have different schedules, and I've tried to communicate with them both from various different times. And so the goal of this is to provide recommendations for revisions to resolution 2018-015, which was put into place in 2018. And at that time, the PUD was under different management, and it reflected a lot of that particular manager's style. And in reading through 2018-015, I see a lot of things there that we haven't been doing. We didn't do it. We haven't done them for years. And so it seems to me we should either adhere to the resolution or we should make recommendations to change the resolution. And so that would be our first starting place on that. And the process is just to go through it after you get past all the whereases. It's not a particularly long document, and just to identify those areas where we feel that there should be changes. One in particular, just to give you an example, it says the general manager or his or her designee is the liaison between the board and the CAB. Well, the CAB communicates directly to the board. The CAB does not need a liaison. The CAB was developed by the board to report to the board. So that's just one example. And so we would go through that and bring back our recommendations to the full board, the full Citizen Advisory Board. And then once we could reach consensus, we would give our recommendations to the Board of Commissioners, and they would take it from there. And of course, I would involve Kevin in this, just, I would like to get his input as well. Then following that, and we're going months down the road, is we do also have a cab operating guidelines. And Russ Michael and Jerry Wilson and Larry Dennison all are, I take that back, it was Gary Rowe, yeah, and Karen Bennett, who had worked on that. And they basically started off with a blank sheet of paper. And there wasn't another cab to look at what they had done. So they looked at some other advisory committees and kind of got a template, and then with input from the entire cab at that time, put together this document. And it took months and months and months. And I'm not foreseeing that sort of thing. I think there are just, some little tweaks here and there we need to do. We're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. We're just going to do a little house cleaning. So that's what our designs are for the governance committee. And Dan, I see you have your hand up.
I do. One of the things that I didn't hear you say was anything about removing things that we weren't using. And if you're going to revise something and you're not following that procedure or not following that particular line, it should be considered for complete removal. There's no sense in having a hangers on.
I agree with you 100%. And I would think that would, recommendations aren't necessarily, I used the wrong word by just saying revisions.
That's fine.
It should be revisions and removals or additions, whatever.
Anytime you get a chance to remove something, you ought to take it.
I agree. Make it as simple as you can and as concise, and that these are things that we're actually doing. And if we're not doing them, then we need to discuss with the group about removing them. I agree. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me see if there's anybody else with a hand up here. Seeing none. Going once, going twice. Okay. The next subcommittee is the Low Income Committee, and we did not meet this past month. Kellen Lynch is in Europe right now, so we're going to try to see if we can maybe get a meeting put together. If we can meet at 10 or 10:30 in the morning, Craig, then that would put Kellen at probably about 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, and that would be beneficial for us. I did try to communicate with Craig, but I ran into a problem. When I'm using my tablet, if I'm responding to an email or emailing someone, and it will show that it's sent. And then when I get on my desktop, I find out, no, it's a draft. And so I apologize for the miscommunication there. And we should meet sometime this coming month and be better prepared to have a report for you at our next meeting, May 9th. And does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, that's the end of the subcommittee reports. And we will move on to item 8.2, process discussion. And I'm just going to give a little overview here. And I know that Craig has some comments he wants to make on this, and so I will likely be shooting this back over to him. But what happens with the subcommittees do not make decisions by themselves. They study a topic, they reach certain conclusions, certain recommendations, they then bring that to the full cab. The full cab then discusses it, comes to a consensus, and then it may or may not go to the Board of Commissioners, depending on how that resolves itself. But the first thing that happens is once the subcommittees are formed and its members expressing their willingness to participate, they then develop their goals, scope of work, process, and they come back and they report to the full CAB, which is what we just went through. Then the full CAB has to decide, okay, do we want that subcommittee to go on and pursue this? Is this something that we're going to want to do? Because ultimately it does come back to us. Is this something we want to work on? Is this something that we think is going to be beneficial for the PUD? Is this something that's going to be helpful to staff? Is this something that is going to help the Board of Commissioners? And then we'll decide which subcommittees that we will move forward for further study. So that's my introduction to this. And if there's anybody who has anything further they want to say, and also you can always find these sorts of things under the CAB operating guidelines. And I encourage you to look at them as a point of reference. I need to look at them as a point of reference. I forget. By the way, before I hand this off to you, Craig, I just wanted to say one thing. I was incorrect at the last meeting in saying that it was established that we would only have 3 members on a subcommittee. That has never been written down anywhere. I had attended several meetings where there was such extensive discussion about it that in my memory that it had been written down and decided upon. It was decided upon by the CAB members of that particular construct, which there's only a couple of us left from that. So at any rate, it would be up to this body to decide whether they have 3 or 4 members. The only real restriction is it could never be a quorum. And at that, I will hand that off to you, Craig.
So a lot of what you said prior to the 3 or 4 members on the subcommittee is not codified. There's nothing in writing. And so just like the last meeting, we decided ad hoc to vote to abolish some subcommittees. I think that we should have for this whole procedure more down in writing so everybody knows how it works. Formation of subcommittees, dissolution of subcommittees, how many members need to be in a subcommittee. We've got probably 3 subcommittees that could be construed as overlapping right now with some of the same members on them. And we only have so many people to deal with so many subcommittees. So I just really object to creating a subcommittee out of thin air. And then you just said that they, you know, we decide if we even want to keep the subcommittee going at a later date. But there's really nothing in writing on any of this stuff. Just like you assumed you could only have 3 people on the subcommittee, that's not in writing. So I think we need to discuss this. I think we need to come out with some written guidelines so that in the future, people have a better idea of how all this works. And that is what I wanted to bring out at this meeting. It's not whether or not we should have a subcommittee, new subcommittees created on global warming or whatever other topic. It's how we go about creating them. And I just think that the CAB needs to get more involved rather than just somebody saying, well, I want to create a subcommittee on whatever it is, and then it becomes a subcommittee. Well, really, is it a good subcommittee of 1 person? I mean, you have to get enough people. We only have so many resources. So I think we need to think this through a little more. And I'd like to see a discussion on that. And I really think we need a more formal process of constituting a subcommittee. So that's what I have to say, and I'd like to open it up for discussion.
Okay, let me make sure I've got, okay. The way this process will work is that each CAB member will have an opportunity to speak to it before a CAB member can speak a second time. And so I see Dan Taylor, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just a brief point of clarification. When we were going through the governance process, I believe that it says that a subcommittee will consist of whatever it takes to be less than a quorum. And that number is currently 4.
That's
and
correct.
So that part of it is really quite clear, I think. And so I don't think we need any more definition in that particular part. What brings all this up is that some of us felt like there were subcommittees that came out of thin air and we didn't know where they came from. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind when talking about how these subcommittees come to be. Again, yeah, we get a chance to vote on them a couple of times, but I think it needs to be a clear process of how they come to either the board or come from the board to the CAB or from the CAB to the board or out of thin air. We need to know where they came from.
I'm going to see if there's any, okay. Dan, in response to that, we had a joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners on February 14th, and each one of these subcommittees, that's where it came from. And then there was a second meeting. It wasn't a joint meeting. It was a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners. I believe it was a budget meeting and to discuss CAB topics. And again, all of these were listed. They were either suggested or endorsed by the Board of Commissioners and staff as well. So none of these really came out of thin air. They came out of discussions that were had mutually with the Board of Commissioners and the Citizen Advisory Board. And as I said, at an additional meeting with staff and the Board of Commissioners.
Well, that's all well and good. It's just that sometimes things get a little out of hand for some of us. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm not trying to place any blame. I'm just saying that some of us didn't understand where all these came from all at once. That's all.
Okay, that's good. And what I would say to you, Craig, too, on changing how we do these things, we will be in the governance, we are going to be going over the CAB operating guidelines. And of course, then we'll be having a big discussion on that. And when we do that, I think that would be the time that we would be discussing making any changes, revisions, or removals of things to the CAB operating guidelines, because it would be better to do that as a full review of the CAB operating guidelines instead of just doing this piecemeal. And before I call on you again, is there anybody else who has any comments they want to make on this? Tom Engel?
Well, I'd just like to say that some of the committees that are in existence, for instance, like the climate change, have been in existence previously. They're not new committees. But I think that I'm a little bit unsure of why there's a confusion in that I think Jessica outlined the process that we've already gone through. And it does seem to me that we, at a previous meeting with the commissioners, we came up with suggestions of subcommittees to work and asked the Board of Commissioners if this was in keeping, if they felt these were appropriate. And with the exception of the looking at the BPA contract, the commissioners said these were appropriate for us. So there seems to be this idea that these committees either come out of thin air or that they're suggestions of one individual without any support from anyone else. doesn't seem appropriate to me. And I think if there were issues among the CAB members at that point, whether these were committees that should be established, that would have been a great time to talk about it.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, if I don't see anyone else, so we'll go back to you a second time, Craig.
So this is why I'm bringing this up, because obviously you've heard from another person that the process really isn't clear on forming a subcommittee. And I think you should make the process clear, and I think we should have a vote of the CAB, and then it would be part of the minutes. And it would be much easier to look back, when was this subcommittee formed? Who were the members? And that kind of stuff. And we've already gotten rid of subcommittees, and we voted to do that. So I see no reason why the CAB shouldn't make this a little more formal. You look like you didn't understand what I said there.
I hear you. I hear what you've said. You've said it numerous times. If you felt that there was a vote that should have been taken at the last meeting, then you should have made a motion for such a vote.
I'm making right now, I'm saying that there was no vote to form those subcommittees. There was no vote. And I'm saying that we should have a vote to form a subcommittee.
Are you making a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion now that the CAB should vote on the formation of all subcommittees.
I second the motion.
Okay, and who is that who seconded?
Bruce.
Bruce. Okay, a motion has been made by Craig Durgan and seconded by Bruce. Craig, do you want to speak any further to your motion?
No, I think it's pretty clear what I want. I just want to vote. I'm not arguing whether we should form subcommittees. I just think it should be a more formal process so it's easier to track.
Okay, there's been a motion made. Do you want to read your motion one more time, Craig, so it's very clear to us all?
My motion is for the CAB to vote on the formation of all subcommittees.
Okay. All those in favor, I'm going to call a roll on this because I can't see
Hang on a
everybody.
second, Jessica.
Yes,
Jessica,
yes.
just one point of discussion. Craig, could you refine that motion to include that the CAB will vote to create and to dissolve any subcommittees?
I would accept that as a friendly motion, friendly amendment.
Okay. Can we get that read one more time? Because Cammie's having to take this down. And so if you could make that one more time with the friendly amendment so that it's clear for us all, Craig, I'd appreciate it.
The motion is to require a vote of the CAB for the formation and dissolution of all subcommittees.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm just going to call the names as they show up on my screen and give me your yay or nay. Craig?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Rod?
Aye.
Seb?
Yes.
Okay. Rick?
Yes.
Okay. Tom?
Yes.
Rod?
Yes.
Rod? Okay. And I'll vote yes as well. So it's unanimous. The motion passes. Thank you for that.
You didn't. This is Bruce. You didn't ask me. I
Oh,
say
Bruce, I'm
say
so
yes
sorry.
as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for speaking up. I'm looking at the names on the screen and you come up as your phone number, and so I missed that. I apologize. Okay, so the motion
Okay.
passes unanimously. Thank you for that, Craig. Okay, moving right along.
Excuse me, Jessica.
Yes,
I was going to make a motion that we approve some subcommittees. Would that be appropriate now or later?
I think given that what we're talking about is the process and we've come to this process and passed this, I think that puts it in effect immediately. So yes, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I don't know quite how to do this in that I'm not sure which committees are already established and have not been dissolved. I know climate change and governance are in that category. Does anybody have any information whether others are in that?
Broadband, climate change, low income and governance were already standing committees. So
Okay,
these were not new committees being added, nor were they nominated to be dissolved. So
Okay.
we would be looking at distributive generation and energy efficiency are the only two I see that we would be looking at.
okay. I move that the CAB establish subcommittees in the areas of energy efficiency and distributed generation. That's really it. Is anybody else out there who are left out of the subcommittee?
Tom, do you want to make your motion for these combined, or do you want to make a motion on? each
To
committee?
save time, I'd like to do this together. And if there is, if the motion is voted down, then I could separate them.
So moved.
Okay, so that's, read that to me one more time, Tom.
I move that the CAB establish subcommittees in the areas of energy efficiency and distributive generation.
And that was seconded by Dan Taylor.
Yep.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to, I guess I'd like some clarification. This is Bruce. Those two subcommittees, are we considering putting those together as one committee or keeping them separate? Because it seems as though there's some overlap there.
They're two separate committees.
They're two separate committees.
Okay.
Okay, if there is no more discussion, Craig?
So basically, I just want to clarify here. The global warming committee is already in existence, but I'm kind of feeling like the energy efficiency and the distributive energy committees might end up overlapping with the three of those together. So, I mean, is there clear defined purpose for all three of these? Because we don't need to rehash the same thing with three committees. They need to be separate. Otherwise, we're wasting a lot of people's time.
Well,
I'm confused. Wait a minute, I'm confused. You said a global warming committee. I've never seen such a committee.
Really? Well, Tom just had a report about it. So is it in existence or not in existence?
We don't
I
have a
think the
committee.
title,
Climate change.
Well, okay, climate change. I equate them as being the same thing, so.
Well, we need to use the correct terms when we're talking about these committees, and the committee is climate change.
Well, that's fine. So the point I'm making here is this going to be an overlap of three committees, or is it going to be distinct, separate issues?
Well,
I can
Tom,
address that.
Tom, you can respond to
Yeah, I
that if
can.
you want to, but there's been a motion made and seconded.
And we're having discussion. So am
Yeah,
I
I'm
allowed to
not
have
real sure.
discussion or not? Because
I-
it seems like you want to just push me out.
Point of order, please. My understanding of Robert's rules is that once a motion's been seconded, and you move into discussion, you have somebody pro, somebody against, somebody pro, somebody against, till all the speakers have had the opportunity, and then call the question.
Point taken. Thank you. I appreciate that. So where are we at here, folks?
I still haven't had my question answered. That's where
Okay,
we're at.
I would like,
like
I
to
think we're at
clear
the
that up
point
a
where
little if I
where
could help.
Jessica invited me to respond to your question, Craig. So I think if you listen to the descriptions that each of these three committees put forward, namely climate change, distributed generation, and energy efficiency, you'd see that there isn't really any overlap. With energy efficiency, we're talking about rebates for different projects. With the distributed generation, we're talking about local production of electricity. And with the climate change committee, we're talking about electric vehicle charging stations and use of the newsletter. So I would submit that what each of these subcommittees has put forward is sufficiently distinct and different that you know, you could say that any two committees overlapped in some sense, but these committees and what they've articulated do not overlap.
Thank you for that.
Dan, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I got a little bit different take on it. I don't know that they necessarily overlap or not, and I don't think until the discussions start to unfold, you will know that. One of the bigger problems I've seen with these subcommittees in the past, particularly in ones that I haven't been involved in, is that they tend to be too general and broad. And it is the job, I feel, of the subcommittee to narrowly define what it is they're talking about and what it is they're going to discuss and what then conclusions might possibly be reached. And unless that happens, the whole thing kind of goes to hell in a handbasket. So at some point during the discussion, after the subcommittee has been formed, those conclusions will have to be brought to the CAB to see if it comes further in discussion. And if it's too broad, then it's up to the rest of us to let them know that.
Thank you, Dan. Don, your hand was up.
Yeah, so I think it's been pretty much answered. You know, the initial step of a new subcommittee would be to take a look at scope and intent, bring it back to the board. If there's overlap, you resolve it.
Okay. So the motion has been made. It's been seconded. We've had discussion. Is there any further discussion? Okay, sounds like we've talked that one out. So again, I'm going to just call roll here to get votes. And I'm going to start with you, Bruce, so I don't leave you out. And Tom, did you want to read this one more time?
You're asking me if I remember my motion, and I think the closest I can come is that move that the CAB establish two subcommittees, one for energy efficiency and one for distributed generation.
Thank you. With that, Bruce, can I get your vote, please?
Hello, Bruce. Come in, please.
Okay, I'm going to move along and I'll come back to Bruce. Dan, how do you vote?
I'm in favor of it. I second it.
That's right, you did. Rick,
Yay.
all righty, Rod,
Yes.
Seb,
Aye, aye. That's
Tom,
me.
I think I know how you're voting, but tell me anyway.
Yes,
Okay, Craig,
I'm going to vote nay on both. I don't think we have the people at this time to staff them all.
okay, thank you, Craig. I will vote aye in favor of it. We're looking for Bruce. Can you hear us? Okay. Well, I can only hope that Bruce is going to reconnect with us, but he's not in here now. And we have 6 aye votes, 1 nay from Craig. We do not have a vote from Bruce. And Kellen isn't here, so the motion passes. Thank you for that. So moving on to item 8.3, and I'm going to take a quick peek at the time here, just to make sure I'm not getting too long-winded here. 8.3 is communications with staff, and actually it is actually communications with staff and communications in general. It might have been missed on someone, but at our last meeting, we had agreed that whenever we're trying to communicate with staff, that we will CC Kevin on that. And I just want to make sure that everybody's very clear about that. We have a very ambitious and willing staff, and if they are already overtaxed with their workload and you communicate with them directly, they will likely say, oh, that's okay, I'll get that for you. I can get that to you within a couple of days. And if it goes through Kevin, Kevin can go ahead and, let us know, well, he can get to it, but it's going to be a week because, maybe Will's working on a grant or something like that. So that's a really important thing that we do, that we respect that request from the general manager. Also with communications.
Can I ask a question on that?
Not right now. I'm not done. I will take questions when I'm done.
Thank you.
I really want to encourage you to utilize the resources that are available to you before you go to staff and request some staff time, because there are all sorts of answers that you can get from going to the website, from referring to previous meetings, from referring to previous board meetings, previous CAB meetings, from referring to operating guidelines and that sort of thing. So I really encourage you to exhaust those resources first. I'm just checking my notes here. Oh, one of the other things that I have asked is Will sends out notification of all the Board of Commissioner meetings, whether they're special meetings, if they're open to the public, he does send those out. So I have requested of him to send those out to the entire CAB. What I do with them is when I get that, if I know I'm going to be available and I want to attend the meeting, I attend the meeting. If I'm not sure about what my availability is going to be, I will look at the agenda and see if there's something in particular that I really want to be there for. And so, for instance, like I said, there was a March 10th meeting. It was a special meeting at which the board did discuss the CAB and topics that the CAB would study, or that they approved for them to study. It was kind of a follow-up to our joint meeting. And that might have been one that you'd been interested in attending. So at any rate, in the future, all board meetings that are open to the public, the CAB will receive an invitation to them. You're not required to attend those meetings, but you will at least be aware of them. Craig, you had a question.
Yes, it was my understanding from the beginning that the Board of Commissioners set the CAB up to be an advisory board to the CAB. And that Will O'Donnell was supposed to be the interface between with the CAB and management and the board, I guess. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, Kevin.
So who is supposed to interface between management, the Board of Commissioners, and the CAB?
The CAB, well, the CAB interface is directly to the Board of Commissioners. And I see Commissioner Collins shaking his head there in agreement.
So then who interface?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Well, then I'll rephrase it. So
Okay,
then,
I'm not trying to be difficult here. I just didn't understand.
so then who is our interface between management and the CAB?
Wouldn't that be Don McDaniels?
You're absolutely right. He's our
Okay,
CAB resource guy.
so if there's anything that any one of the CAB members need, we should be able to speak with Don McDaniel.
I believe so.
I think.
No.
I'm
Right.
just trying to clarify what you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Thanks for stepping
you
in
know,
there, Kevin.
it sounds like we just got to go to Kevin. So
No,
I just
no.
want to clarify, because I mean, if I CC him in every email, he's got to read the email. So now I'm taking his time up. So I just want to be clear what the interface is with management to the CAB.
Okay, let me see if I can answer this a little bit, and then I'm going to go to Dawn and also Commissioner Collins. One of the things that we've tried to establish with the subcommittees is you have a chair on your subcommittee. The chair may be the person who interacts with staff, or you may have somebody else. The chair might appoint somebody on that subcommittee to interact with staff, but you shouldn't have like three people, you know, everybody from the subcommittee all trying to interact with staff. And so that should be minimized. Also, anything that you can find on the internet, any past meetings, any thing with operating guidelines, anything that you can do yourself, you should do yourself before trying to bring staff into it. I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Collins, and then I will have Don McDaniel, both of them, respond to your question. Commissioner Collins.
Yeah, thank you. The point I want to make is that from my perspective, the PUD continues to be somewhat understaffed. And I really appreciate the comments made that members of the Citizen Advisory Board go through a process to get some consensus, at least on a subcommittee level, before going to individual staff to ask questions. And when I have a particular question, I always CC Kevin on it. I think it's important for him to be in the loop. And so that's a part of the process that I think needs to be followed when there's an outreach from the Citizen Advisory Board to an individual staff member.
Thank you. Don?
So my responsibility has kind of always been logistical and administrative. The reason for the contact support, a different contact group with the staff is that to make sure we understand the workload that's going on when we ask for help on different subcommittees. And I think that's the reason that Kevin wanted to be CC'd. So if somebody is really involved with something and they don't have time to do something, he can say no. So in those instances, I think where we're asking for staff support, we probably ought to CC Kevin. Kevin?
Kevin, did you have anything you wanted to mention on that?
Yeah, it's hard for staff to say no sometimes to people.
Yeah.
And my job is to say no for them. And that's why I appreciate to be CC'd.
Thank you,
And-
Tom.
and-
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, in terms of the board, normally when there's a project that you're working on, you want to send recommendations to the board, you go directly, either through the assignment of the board for someone to make a presentation or the chair of the board.
So
thank you.
I would like to put out another,
Craig, excuse me. Tom had his hand raised and he needs to have an opportunity to speak, and then you can speak a second time to the same topic. Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, maybe we can make this very concrete. The Climate Change Committee is the only committee this time around that had concrete plans. That is, the three of us came up with ideas, very specific ideas. And what I would think would be the appropriate thing would be for us to send an email to Kevin saying, we would like to work on the following two items: a plan to have the EV, the PUD finance level 2 chargers, and 2, to use the newsletter, part of the newsletter each month for a topic on climate change, and essentially get a reaction from staff on this, because if staff is not willing to do either or both of these, then there's no point in the subcommittee of following up on that. So would that be an appropriate thing to do at this point? Kevin says yes. Okay, so that might be a model then. So I would say, rather than CCing Kevin, when your subcommittee is throwing things around, wait until the subcommittee is unified and wanting to do something specific. And then if that requires staff time, then approach Kevin.
Okay, Dan and Craig, I'm going to get back to you, but the protocol is that everyone gets an opportunity to speak once before a CAB member speaks a second time to a particular topic. So Dan, I'm calling on you.
Thank you. I think that maybe, Tom, you're getting the cart a little ahead of the horse. Until the rest of the CAB has a chance to look at those actionable things, I don't think you should be going to staff to look at those. It's not until the full body votes on your recommendation that any action is taken, whether that goes to the board, whether that goes to Kevin. I think those actionable things need to be looked at by the full board.
And I'm going to go back to Craig now.
well, I think this process that we've been talking about needs to be formalized and put in writing so that it's clear, instead of just, having a verbal discussion of it. And then how is a new CAB member going to know what they're supposed to do? So I would propose that happen.
I think that would be something that the governance committee would be exploring. And we could look at putting that into writing at that time.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Tom, did you have something more you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to Dan's comment. Dan, I understand what you're saying, but here's the issue. It makes no sense for the subcommittee to come up with a detailed financial plan outlining every step of the way if the management were not in favor of even considering the idea. And that's why I said I think it's appropriate that we contact Kevin at this point and say, are you open to us developing a plan along this direction or not? And if he says, yes, I'm open to it, then we would formulate such a plan and then submit it to the CAB to see if they agree with it. But there's no point in us going through all this work if in fact the management is not in favor of it. And I would say that Kevin did give a heads up on my suggestion that the appropriate thing would be to very briefly say, is this worth developing?
Okay, fair enough.
Rod, I apologize. I did not see your hand. I have to toggle between a couple of screens here, so.
That's okay. That's okay. I want to read you what's in the onboarding packet that I received. And this is 8/12/2019 CAB operating guidelines. And I'm not sure what page I'm on here. Just a second here. I got to get to the right control. Well, we're on page 4 and it says subcommittees. The first order of business for a subcommittee is to elect a chair. The chair is the spokesperson for the subcommittee at CAB and BOC meetings. For complex issues, the second task is to develop a scope of work, including an anticipated timeline. The statement of work should be an outline of the study topic. Once developed, the statement of work is presented to the CAB so that it can be discussed by members and discussed, and members of the public can comment. Is suggested that the draft statement of work also be presented to the Board of Commissioners. So it seems to me that it's already defined there, but nobody's following that set of guidelines.
Thank you. Okay, let me see. Okay. So moving on from here. Well, I'm not actually moving on. It says communications with staff, but I did want to discuss some further communications. And I think we'll move on to 8.4, the CAB email, and I will discuss those further communications as well. I know most people check their email when they know that a CAB meeting is coming up, but I don't know with what frequency people are checking their emails. Otherwise, I would just like to recommend that you try to check your email once a day. Most times you're not going to see anything there, but when you do see something there, it's probably going to be of some importance. Additionally, with communications, I just wanted to, well, I'm going to save that for the good of the order. Never mind. That's about all I have on the CAB email. I do want to remind you, when it's an email out to the entire CAB, you don't want to hit reply all, because then that puts us into a serial meeting. However, when you're with your subcommittee, which consists of 3 or 4 people, you are not, you do not, it does not constitute a quorum. And so with your subcommittees, if you wanted to have a serial meeting because of the convenience, because it's difficult to find places to meet in person and that sort of thing, by all means. And at that point, then I would imagine you want to be sure that you are hitting reply all. Tom, is your hand still up or is that left over? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, it was up again. I just wanted to point out that the PUD can enable you to get a text message when there is a new email that is coming your way. And that's the way I check my email box. I don't look at the email every day, but when I get a text, then I do look at it. And I would also ask that that we either have a calendar, an official calendar for the CAB meetings, or we get more advance notice of an upcoming meeting.
Unless there's a holiday, the CAB meeting is always the second Monday of the month. Our next meeting will be May 9th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else? Okay, seeing none, then I will go on to the good of the order. And I have a couple of things there. going back to difficulties with meetings. Well, I hosted my first Zoom meeting last week, and it was far easier than I anticipated. I know that I was a little intimidated by the process, but it's really quite simple. You can get a Zoom account at no cost to you that will allow you to host a meeting for 40 minutes. And one of the things that's a little confusing is when you go to request your meeting, they do it in 15-minute intervals, meaning that it looks like your meeting is 30 minutes. However, during the course of your meeting, after 30 minutes, the host receives a message that says you have 10 minutes left. So that gives you your full 40 minutes, and it gives you time to let all those people involved in your meeting know that you need to wrap it up. But it's just really a great process, very simple, and it comes at no cost to you. So I would just really recommend that. Additionally, I want to give a big shout out to Will O'Donnell. I know he has been extremely busy with all of this broadband, with writing, excuse me, working with others to write grants. And we've been very successful with our grants. And then he has all this time where he's hosting our meetings. And I just really appreciate everything that he does. I've never gone to Will about anything that he hasn't been able to resolve for me if it's within his purview. So I just forget to thank him. And I just wanted to be sure and do that today. And Dan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add he's fun too.
Oh, yeah. So he makes you laugh, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's always a big plus. So the next meeting will be May 9th at 2 o'clock. And is there anybody else who has anything for the good of the order? Dan, your hand's still up.
No, it's up again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think as we're establishing subcommittees, and we kind of snuck away from that without me really realizing that's what we were doing, but I think I would like to be on the distribution generation subcommittee. And so I'm not on the one and only I'm going to be on.
Okay, well, that should be of real benefit to Tom, and I think it's, is it Rick who's on that? All right then. If there is no other business, then it is, let me check the time, 3:45. I'm looking for hands here real quick. It is 3:45 and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Good job, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.